Many years ago, my family moved to Australia, and having lived there for maybe 4 years in one place, we moved to a second place that was even more remote than the first. The first was a small, quite nice town called Rockhampton in Queensland on the east coast of Australia. The second was Darwin on the north coast in the Northern Territory. Now, I bring this up because of something that happened while I was there pretty much immediately when they found out I was a, quote, Yank, when I was from the United States. They asked me, certain of the people who were there asked me, was I a cowboy or a gangster? That's really all they knew to ask me. They didn't have any picture of America that they hadn't gotten out of comic books or movies or whatever that they might have seen along the way in their lives. This is how a lot of people live their lives. Even if they get outside the United States, sometimes they still live their lives in this place of not really understanding things that are outside of their general scope or purview. I want to talk today about this idea of Wild West on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Wednesday, the 16th of February of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, the podcast, YouTube, BitChute, CloudHub, my Facebook page, Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com, minds.com, Parler, Gab, or anywhere else you happen to be picking me up today. And again, the subject I want to get into is Wild West, and I want to tie this into, in part, this idea of people not really understanding how things are or were in any way more than a sort of a perfunctory and often not even a perfunctory way. So I'm going to go ahead and go through my notes, and hopefully this will help you to see what I'm saying, and then we'll expand on that when we get into the sort of free play area. It's hard to find a movie, television show, or even book about the Old West in the United States that doesn't feature some bad guys, sometimes working in concert, sometimes not, using their rifles, pistols, or other armament like dynamite, for example, as a means to acquire the things they need or want outside of what most would count reasonable and proper methods to do that. In fact, it's arguable, without even working too hard, that their actions are unethical, illegal, and often immoral. To begin with, I would expect the Wild West wasn't so wild. I wasn't there, so I'm working from my suppositions. I would be surprised to hear that it wasn't a place of what most today would count boredom, punctuated by episodes of hard work. I would bet that most folks spent next to no time using firearms or even knives in ways that weren't constructive. But if you want for your movie to do well at the box office, you have to insert events that'll make people ooh and ah. You have to, because they're not going to watch it otherwise, as a rule. So the point is, I think it likely most people in the modern day get their pictures of that time and place from what they've seen on the silver screen or read in a fictional work somewhere. Even books like Little Women, though, which I believe to be semi-factual, I'm not sure, but I think that's the case. It was based loosely on fact, is what I think is probably the case, tend to tell a different story. It seems likely there were very few shootouts at the OK Corral. However few or many, though, the funny part is there are a bunch of folks out there who would likely contend the reason such things happened at all was the proliferation of weapons of various kinds that occurred in that time and place. Truth is, many people try to use that as a reason to control what arms are allowed or expected to be available in the present moment. I can't help but wonder how many such people are fully aware what they're pushing is likely pretty much total hokum. Here's the part I find a head-scratcher. Even if the number of events involving outlaws was substantially greater than I suspect, the people in question were still just that, outlaws. In the same way people abuse automobiles, in the same way folks do what they do with arms of various kinds, and did likewise in the past, whether Old West or not, where those guns and weapons are concerned, it's all the same. They do the abuse of automobiles, abuse of weapons, whatever it happens to be. It's all the same. It's all the same. If we make the statement, injudicious use of various things might result in the privilege to use them being taken away, though I think we need to be very careful about such an idea, I can kind of see the sense in that. You go around shooting people, we take your right to have guns. I can sort of see that, but I have a little bit of a hard time with even that. On the other hand, if we decide, say, cars should be banned as a result of the idea that bad usage could cause death or injury, most folks would probably say you are headed in not so great directions. The same thing applies for me when people start talking about allowing Americans to have various types of weapons, likely resulting in a return to the Wild West. To begin with, I'm just not so sure that would be as problematic as lots of folks seem to think, even if it was as violent and so forth as it's portrayed in a lot of places. On top of that, though, I really doubt that would be the outcome one might expect. I just don't think that's how that would work out. Will allowing folks to practice their Second Amendment right cause us to return to that bygone era? I don't tend to think so, but if it did, would it really be such a bad thing? Okay, now I'm done with my notes and I'm here to talk about this. I think, again, I've said a lot in my notes, and I hope that you understand what I'm getting at and why I'm saying the various things that I'm saying. The reality is, I don't believe that the majority of people in the Old West ran around shooting one another. And I believe that even the outlaws were fewer and farther between than lots of people would like to imagine or believe. Okay, I don't believe that was as common a thing. In fact, I think what you'll find is the number of, quote, outlaws in the modern day probably far outnumbers, even on a per capita basis, the number of outlaws that existed in the Old West. I really believe that's probably true. And to make that worse, because there are certain places, San Francisco comes to mind, New York City may be one of those places, New Jersey may be one, a state that's an example of that, where people aren't taken to task for improper outlaw activities and therefore just are pretty much able to continue doing what it was that they were doing all along with relative impunity, while people who are doing right things, and I've seen people put this various ways, like the guy who said, I forget exactly what he said, but basically the idea is, you come into Walgreens and you shoplift $900 worth of stuff and the security folks don't touch you. I try to walk into Walgreens in my local area without a mask and 2 people restrain me and make me leave the building. Right? This is where we are today. This is where we are. So if we're not actually possessing more outlaws in the modern day than in past, you should be somewhat surprised to hear that, to be quite frank with you. I'm sorry, but you should be surprised that that's the case. My perspective, my attitude, my viewpoint is this. The right to bear arms, keep and bear arms, is not something that should be infringed, in my opinion, even for people who are felons and so forth. When they do things with those arms, with those guns, that's when action should be taken. Yes, I realize it's too late when somebody dies. But here's the thing. This isn't The Sixth Sense, that movie I think it was, where they tried to catch criminals before they committed the crimes. We're not in that world. The world we're in is people commit crimes and we take them to task for doing so. I'm sorry. Yes, it's possible one day I may die at the hands of an outlaw who decides that it's a good idea to gun me down in the street. Yes, that's true. But you cannot take away people's rights on the basis. There's a story I heard once, and I'll do this story and then I'll probably wrap up after this. It's a story of a man and his wife who go out to their cabin near a lake, and he goes out fishing early in the morning, comes back in, and he wants to get some shut-eye. Well, she thinks to herself, it's a beautiful morning, and it'll be a beautiful afternoon to sit on the lake and read. So she takes a book, and she goes out and she starts to read. Well, a game warden game and fish type, comes up and says, "Ma'am, I'm going to have to cite you for fishing without a license." And she's holding a book, not a rod. She says, "What do you mean?" Well, and he says, "Well, you have the equipment right there to fish, so I'm assuming that that's what you must be intending to do." And her response is, "Well, that's okay. When I file charges against you for rape, you should count that an okay thing." And he says, "What on earth are you talking about?" She says, "Yeah, you have the equipment, so I have to assume that's what you're going to do." And obviously that's not how that works. It doesn't take any kind of brainiac to figure this out, okay? Okay, I need to go ahead and wrap up because I'm a minute over time already. This has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Wednesday, the 16th of February of 2022. That means tomorrow will be Thursday, trundling ever closer to that end of the week. Thursday, the 17th of February of 2022. In case I said anything else, it is February this month. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, the podcast, YouTube, BitChute, CloudHub, my Facebook page, Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com, mine's minds.com, the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there is where I tend to post my videos, Parler, Gab, or anywhere else you happen to be seeing me today. Rumble is my preferred platform. You can give me a boxing glove or a Rumble on Rumble if you choose to do that. You can give me a plus or a minus on Rumble, or a like or dislike on any other place that you view my content where the ability to do that can be found. Obviously, you can comment on what I say, and I actually covet your comments because they help me to know whether or not what I'm producing is good, bad, or indifferent in your mind. Subject for today has been Wild West. Tomorrow we're going to talk on the idea of setting boundaries. I'm not exactly sure what I had in mind there. Sometimes a week back I come up with something and I go, well, okay, I'll talk about that, and I take the time to write down a little bit about it, and then I promptly forget what it was because 10 other things have come to me in the meantime. Okay, I wanted to say also on the comments, if you comment and you're advertising, count on your comment being deleted, as I said in my last podcast gleefully. So if you comment in such a way that I feel like I need to respond, I will do that. Otherwise, I'll just, work to figure out what it is that you're trying to say. Hope you're having a good day today and that everything is going well for you. And hopefully we will see you again on Thursday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was recorded on Wednesday, February the 16th of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.